One of the big things that went through my mind in watching this is thinking about an article I read recently about white feminism versus black feminism.
Let's
and
talk
how
about
the white feminists today are very upset with Michelle Obama, not very happy with what she's been doing since she's been in the White House, because she's focusing on her children, mom in chief, and healthy living and gardening and that kind of thing. And one of the responses that I read and which resonated with me was that we didn't necessarily have the option to stay home and take care of our families in the same way that white women did. So that may be the difference that white feminists aren't looking at, and as they're examining Michelle Obama's role in the White House.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just curious to see,
That's a
hear
great
from
question, because
other
our
women.
story, our
different.
feminism, our story of feminism is very different.
It's very different. One of the big things that went through my mind in watching this is thinking about an article I read recently about white feminism versus black feminism.
Let's talk about
how the white feminists today are very upset with Michelle Obama, not very happy with what she's been doing since she's been in the White House, because she's focusing on her children, mom in chief, and healthy living and gardening and that kind of thing. And one of the responses that I read and which resonated with me was that we didn't necessarily have the option to stay home and take care of our families in the same way that white women did. So that may be the difference that white feminists aren't looking at, and as they're examining Michelle Obama's role in the White House.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just curious to see,
That's a
hear
great
from
question, because
other
our
women.
story, our
different.
feminism, our story of feminism is very different.
It's very different.
Because, and I want our panel to chime in, but when those women were fighting their way out of their middle class homes, black women had to work. We had to help.
And they kept talking about middle class. I'm like, what?
But
we
that wasn't
weren't there.
that wasn't
our
us.
story.
That wasn't our
Exactly.
story. Anybody want to talk about black feminism versus white feminism, and maybe how we marry the two?
I want to take a little crack at it. It's really interesting that I think that actually within the world of academia, a lot of black women have really made strides in kind of changing the discourse, and saying that our issues are womanist issues, or our issues are race critical issues, because when you talk about privilege and you talk about people being entitled based on their gender, that for many black women, even in any discourse about feminism, the question was, we can have unity with white women around white paternalism, but in terms of issues of power and entitlement, our issues with black men are different. They aren't necessarily those same issues. It's not to say we don't have issues, but they're just not those same issues. And so I think that many black women, in looking at the issue of feminism, were trying to find a way to frame it in which we're still talking about rights, we're still talking about equality and parity, but we're not, our communities and our families in some cases are very fragile, and we don't want to be making statements that would appear to be anti-black men, etc., because all of these are issues that we still have to negotiate within our own context. So I think that it's very interesting. I saw a clip from one of the shows in this series that's about women's liberation, and actually Eleanor Holmes Norton talks about this when she says, well, when we first heard about feminism and women burning their bras, we said, well, that's a white woman's issue, because it didn't really seem to really address what our particular historical experience has been in this country.
And what we don't talk about also is the fact that the white women's feminism, their activism was inspired in large part from black women who were working in the civil rights movement. They saw, and they came to Alabama, and they marched alongside us, and they saw how black women were organized and how good of a leader we were and how we were in charge and we could do it. And they were so inspired that they left the movement to start their movement, which still benefited us in many ways. But yes, that was a very critical question. Did somebody over here? Dr. Williams.
Point in particular, we have to keep in mind that the way that the Michelle Obama image is now is framed very carefully. In part for two reasons. One, when Hillary Clinton tried to work actively in the White House, even with Chelsea, she said she didn't want to be home baking cookies, right? And there was this like big uproar by women who were at home saying, what's wrong with being at home baking cookies?
Absolutely.
And so the working people said one thing, and then when Michelle Obama initially continued to work with Barack Obama, being in the U.S. Senate, and then even for some time during the campaign, there was a big deal about the fact that she continued to work. At a certain point, it became clear that she had to adopt a certain kind of image for the reasons that we were talking about earlier. Her appearance was threatening. She can only wear a kitten heel, and as a tall woman, it's serious. I mean, when you walk into a room, then people are kind of like taken aback. So I didn't ever have I have to speak softly.
And remember when during the campaign there was the cover, the
The
magazine cover,
absolutely. That's what
with the bush
Yes.
and the angry black woman
Yep.
issue resurfaced.
So she had to really soften her image, because on that New Yorker cover, Barack is kind of looking off clueless, and Michelle's like, with Angela Davis, she literally has like bullets around her, strapped across her. So she does have to soften the image, but you can rest assured that Michelle Obama is a force to be reckoned with, even if she isn't allowed to be the public face of the working woman. And ultimately, I think she's done a really good job of balancing that, saying, right.
The point was that the white feminists, they don't see that in the way that we see that. They see it as an affront. They're over her. Actually, one woman said, I'm over Michelle Obama, because basically she's not doing what they think she should be doing with the power that she has in that in the White House.
But I think you have to read around the silence of that, the things that aren't being talked about. And very often we have to say, let's have a real conversation, as opposed to, you're over her because you're over the fact that like she's revered as this like really strong woman. You're not over her because of kind of class issues or because of what she does. Really? So, I mean, those conversations, you say, if you want to have the conversation, let's have the conversation, but let's not pretend to have a conversation that isn't what you really want to talk about.
And then you have to look at who is complaining, because if you look at her approval ratings, they are through the roof. They are better than her husband's. And it's not just black women. So, you got to put it all in perspective there. Raising 5 children as a widow, they didn't understand. Like, what are you doing? Are you quitting? Look at all I've done and sacrificed for you. And that's a big issue in our community and for women of color who have seen their family members struggle. So I want us to address that issue of work-life balance and being accepted in the community for stepping down from your job to focus on family. Anybody? Dr. Jones?
Say something about that. I have two boys. They're 5 and 3, and so it's something that you have to figure out what balance works for you. And I've talked to many women. How do you make it work? What you find out is you collect the data, you get information, but you're going to have to figure out what personally makes it work for you. And and the other side of that is you have to. For me, my kids come first. But I chair a department. I can say my kids come first and try to go home, but I'm still going to have an email or a fire to put out, so you can't. A lot of people, I think, make that decision seem a lot more black and white than it is. You should choose your kids and always just think about your kids, or you're a bad mother, or, you should, but the truth is you kind of have to think about everything at the same time all the time,